Hello and welcome back to Read Becca. You are here again for one of my chatty catch-ups on everything I read in the past week and what I'm reading currently and what I'm looking forward to or thinking about reading. So I did read a lot this week, but it was a very frustrating reading week for me. I was reading so slowly. I was reading really like 20 pages an hour, which is not terrible, but it's not great either. And so I was kind of beating my head against the wall, but thanks to sheer volume of having a 3-day weekend in the US last weekend, and then due to Jubilee, whatever the Royal Jubilee holiday was for a bank holiday in the UK, that meant work was very slow for me at the end of this past week. So I had a lot of reading time, even though I was reading slowly. So anyway, I got through quite a bit, but I want to kind of race through it here because I do have a lot to talk about. So the first one that I finished was a reread that I talked about last week. This is Black Sun by Rebecca Roanhorse, and I love this cover. I don't like the second book cover as much, but that is why I was reading it. So I reread this on audio because I absolutely loved it. It ends right in the middle of the action. So I'm expecting to go from that cliffhanger right into it in the second book, and the second book just came out. So that's why I wanted to reread it. I'm not going to talk really about too much of the plot here. I think most people have seen this. If you haven't, where have you been? But it's epic fantasy, big political drama, and factions in a Mesoamerican inspired setting. It's very cool because we have like a sun priest and an epic prophecy all converging with this eclipse, which is the black sun. So there is very much a multi-POV convergence at an eclipse that's happening. And we were kind of just coming to a climax when the book ended, of course. So I don't know how it's going to be 3 books because this is supposed to be a trilogy, but yeah, I think I'm very much looking forward to the second book and getting into that one. So on audio, interestingly, I know some people had mentioned that they felt like this was kind of YA, and I did not get that at all on my first read, but reading it on audio, I kind of can see that because I don't want to say it's like overacted, maybe over dramatized in the first couple perspectives mainly, but it definitely did feel that much younger vibe in the listening experience versus the reading experience. Reading it on print, it felt very stoic. Like it feels very dramatic and stoic and hard almost. The tone was totally different reading on audio. So that was really interesting, and I definitely picked up on some details that I had kind of missed before. So I really am glad that I reread it. Then I read Palimpsest by Catherynne and Valente, and this is very much a just vibes book, I have to say. I enjoyed it, again, so very much. So I think both of these were 5-star reads. The plot is a little muddy. Really, the plot is starting out with many characters. You meet each character in a major city all over the world, and we're meeting them as they have basically a sexual encounter, like a really intense hookup with someone, and then a dark splotch shows up on their body, and it's a map. Basically, it looks like a bruise or a birthmark maybe, but it's a map of the secret city, Palimpsest. And so that's the whole premise really to this, is there's this sort of hidden magical world. Almost it's not quite a portal, it's more like a dream world where you get there by having these extreme sexual experiences. So there's like a sex magic thing going on. So we're following these many characters. They're very diverse. They're from all over the world: Russia, Tokyo, San Francisco, all over. And those cities are very much major elements. It's like the setting is almost a character of its own for this book. And that's I think the main thing about this book is world building. The prose is gorgeous and poetic. It's like you want to take a bite out of the prose. It's delicious. The characterization is so good. Every one of these characters feels very real. You can really grasp their emotions, and at times it's heartbreaking. And really the drive of the plot, there just isn't very much there plot-wise, but I still absolutely love this. So the drive of the plot is really just these people who are always wanting to get back to this city. They feel like it's their home now, more or less. Like they have this connection to get there, and not just them, like anyone who has been there is always trying to get back to Palimpsest, and people are trying to find a way to get there permanently, and it's such a strange place. So you have to really like extreme weirdness. So to give you an idea of kind of the weirdness and the prose, I have just a couple of things. And as I said, it's very much vibes. Like you have to really want to go in and think about how it's written and what it's saying without literally saying anything. It's not saying what it's saying, if that makes sense. Workers carry their lunches in clamshells. They wear extraordinary uniforms, white and green scales laid one over the other, clinging obscenely to the skin, glittering in the spirelight. They wear nothing else. Every wrinkle and curve is visible. They dance into the factory, their serpentine bodies writhing a shift change, undulating under the punch clock with its cheerful metronomic chime. Their eyes are Piscine, third eyelid half drawn in drowsy pleasure as they sidestep and gamble and spin to the rhythm of the machines. And what do they make in this factory? Why, the vermin of Palimpsest. There is a machine for stamping cockroaches with glistening green carapaces, their maker's mark hidden cleverly under the left wing. There's a machine for stamping and pounding rats, soft gray fur stiff and shining when they are first released. There is another mold for squirrels, one for chipmunks, and one for plain mice. There's a centrifuge for spiders, a lizard pour, a delicate and ancient machine which turns out flies and mosquitoes by turn, so exquisite, so perfect that they seem to be made of nothing but copper wire, spun sugar, and light. There's a printing press for graffiti, which spits out effervescent letters in scarlet, black, angry yellows, and the trademark green of Casmeria. They fly from the high windows and flatten themselves against the walls, trestles, and train cars. So it's so beautiful, but what it's trying to express with the intimacy between people as well, between the characters, is so amazing in this prose. I have another passage marked on that. To touch a person, to sleep with a person, is to become a pioneer, a frontiersman at the edge of their private world, the strange, incomprehensible world of their interior, filled with customs you could never imagine, a language which sounds like your own, but is really totally foreign, knowable only to them. I have been so many times to countries like that. I have learned how to make coffee in all their ways, how to share food, how to comfort, how to dance in the native ways. It is harder usually to find a person who wants to walk the streets of me, to taste the teas of my country, to immigrate, you could say. So it's talking about intimacy between people being a way of immigrating. And I think that was a theme throughout this immigration and sharing of experience as culture is really threaded throughout. So I struggle with even talking about and expressing how much I like this. Much like Vita Nostra last week, it's really hard to express what this book is, what it's about, why it's so beautiful, and yeah, I love that kind of book. So this was very much my catnip, as I kind of expected, and that's why I picked it up. So I do think one of the interesting things about this is it did mention her Fairyland series. This has some quotes from it. However, this predates the Fairyland series. So this is kind of like the deal with Middle Game, where Shannon McGuire wrote Middle Game, and there is a story in there that is referenced throughout, and it is completely fictional, but then she actually went and wrote that book, and has since published that as A. Deborah Baker, who is kind of this author that's referenced in there. Well, in this one, it references Fairyland. She wrote the Fairyland books a few years later, so very, very cool tie-in to another of her works. So that was kind of cool to see. And I've rambled on longer than I wanted to, of course. Then I have Each of Us a Desert by Mark Oshiro, and yet again, this was very good. It's like nothing I have read before, and very odd. This is all a desert setting, as it says. It's definitely fantastical. It's not really clear what exactly, like, time-wise the setting is, but I would say it's secondary world that is a complete, like, desert. The whole thing is. So we're following in this community in the middle of the desert, a small community. This character, Sochi, who is a cuentista, which is a storyteller, but she's not quite a storyteller. Like, her role to the community is much more of a confessor. And so people are unburdening their stories to her, and then she goes out into the desert and recounts that story and gives it up to the sun. And so there is almost this element of sun worship, but not in the traditional sense. They definitely have a ritual and belief set around, or tradition, I would say, around the sun. The sun is an entity in their life, for sure. So that was really interesting on its own. The actual plot, I would say, I don't want to talk too much about plot because there's a lot to spoil in terms of the plot, but she has that role and kind of ends up doing something that's a taboo for her role, and ends up, as a result of that, having to leave her community and go and wander in the desert on this big epic journey across the desert. And so most of this is following a desert journey. So I think the writing in this is really, really stunning. It's very unusual because I would say this is like talking to someone who has English as their second language, very much, where it constantly switches in and out of having a couple words here and there of Spanish. So I didn't have a problem with that, and I don't know Spanish, but I was able to infer what I didn't know from context very easily. I had to look up a couple of words, or I didn't really have to, but I wanted to know it, like, specifically what word that was versus just inferring it from context. So I did a couple lookups, but yeah, this is absolutely completely woven throughout with Spanish. Like, every single page has some Spanish. There is also actual poetry in here. We'll see if I can find some, where it is in Spanish and English side by side. So it'll just be a couple of lines here and there, really, is what it is. And I think those poems were extremely beautifully written. I think the overall writing was extremely beautiful, and here I'll give an example. So this is literally just the first page. It always began at night, when you had disappeared, and when you were gone, we came alive. I am your cuentista, Soli. I had been raised to take the stories of others and return them to you in ritual, but I had none of my own. I also ran away. I left behind Empalme, mi familia, you, myself, and I ran. We should have spoken to you long ago, and I couldn't. I needed to be free, and I'm not sorry, so let me tell you a story, Soli. So the perspective, as you can tell there, is a little odd. I think I would call this second person, because she is largely or intermittently addressing a you, a capital Y, you, that is the sun. And throughout it, it's a lot of I statements, so I think you can get the sense that she is telling a story. However, yet again, more caveats, I don't know if this will even show up. If you can see, there are darker bands, and you can't even really tell when you're reading it, but those darker pages are the stories that she has been told as the cuentista, that people have unburdened to her over the course of this larger story that she is telling. So it's got a really layered approach. It's completely innovative, totally different from anything I have read. So I think that is the main of what I have to say. There were a couple things that bothered me. The first one is that she's on a long epic journey through the desert, and the whole time she travels during the day. That is like rule one of being in the desert, like being wandering in the desert, is you do not travel during the day. So she constantly has to worry about water, obviously, and she knows how, as a person who kind of lives in the desert, she knows how to find water, and so she is able to get by doing that. It's not like she is constantly running out of water or anything, but there's never enough if you're out in the desert and traveling during the day in the heat. So that just really bothered me. It was something so obvious and ridiculous. The other thing is kind of, well, it's definitely a spoiler. So I'm going to keep it vague so I don't give anything too important away. But that she gets to the destination of her journey. Like, it's very obvious she's going to a specific place. Like that was the intended thing right from the very beginning. So she does reach this place, and pretty much immediately there is this, well, I guess I gotta go back. And I hated that. That just really bothered me, because I felt like I wanted her to have come so far and learned so much that there is no going back, to be like, yeah, I can't go back to the life I had before. So that just bothered me. The other thing I have to say about this one is that I read everything through my own lens, obviously, and my lens is very much one of coming up with evangelical fundamentalism. So reading this through that lens, I saw throughout a lot of commentary on legalism. So she learns really, really quickly and repeatedly throughout that the way that she's been taught that things work for her role as a Quintista, for everything to do with their kind of belief and ritual around the sun, is not quite the whole picture, I think maybe is the way to phrase it. Because she quickly starts meeting people, or as soon as she does meet people outside of her community, she sees that they do things differently. And that's immediately the first examples I really was turned off, because she thinks they're bad, or she thinks they're wrong in what they're doing. She immediately sees people who are doing things in a different way as her way is right, their way is wrong. And the book reinforces that with the first couple examples. So kind of as she's going along, we see this play out multiple times in kind of different aspects, where that legalism keeps coming back up, of someone thinking they have the only interpretation, or they're in the right, they know what is right, and executing something as a result of that, and it not really being the whole picture. So yeah, we see that kind of corruption, I guess, as a result of legalism play out a lot. So I did come around to that element, I think, in the way it was expressed in the end, but at the beginning I was extremely turned off by it. I would say I really had a problem with, her lack of realization initially and naivety about things, and that did get on my nerves throughout, not just in this element. She is very naive and kind of annoying at times. She makes a bad choice surrounding that taboo, and it creates problems. It creates real problems, and she doesn't do anything in a time when she needs to act. And yeah, it was a very bothersome the way she reacted to that, and just kind of looping. So anyway, I was very mixed on it. I thought it was super innovative, really, really beautifully written. I just got annoyed by the character and had a couple of minor quibbles with the plot. So overall, it was really in the great column, I think. So that is what I read this week. What else is on the docket? So this is not what I'm reading. This is One Word Kill. I can't talk today. This is the first book in the Impossible Times trilogy. I am reading the third, Dispel Illusion, on ebook. So I just thought I would hold this one up. Then I'm reading King Rat. So I'm 50 pages into this. I'm a little unsure about it. There's a good amount of bigotry in here. I was expecting it, considering the time it's depicting, considering when it was written, but it's an awful lot. Yeah, and the tone is very odd. So I don't know, but I'm continuing on with that one. Then I am planning to pick up My Life in France by Julia Child as my first for my TBR this week. I also have a problem in that I have 2 holds sitting at the library now for my BookTube prize reading. So I just finished Each of Us a Desert, so that is going to go back, and I'm going to grab my holds and hopefully get started on one of those. We will see. I am really excited for the first of those, which I won't say what it is, but I could say what it is. I did get assigned Translated Fiction Group A for this round, so that's what I will be reading regardless. So that is my reading. I don't think I have too much to talk about life-wise. I have not done anything very exciting, but I was very busy this week. I had a lot of running back and forth, and I went to the gym. I've really been enjoying being back at the gym, and I thought it was going to be a lot harder going back to the gym than it has been. Like, I haven't had any major soreness, which is great. I did try to really ease it into it and slowly ramp up, so that I'm sure helped, but yeah, I have not been having any like major whiplash from doing that. I had to rent the vet and the shelter both this week, so that all meant lots of audiobook time, so that's why I flew through Black Sun. I think that's it life-wise. In shows, oh man, I have been so happy that MasterChef has been back. I have watched the first 2 episodes of the new MasterChef, and I also realized that I had not ever gotten to the new season of MasterChef Junior that came out 2 months ago, maybe, I think, a couple months ago. So I have been all MasterChef all the time. I'm watching all of that season and all of the new season of MasterChef and enjoying them both immensely. In recommendations, I have a ton of stuff. Onyx Pages popped back up after a little bit of a break from WizCon, and Jerry is the channel owner, if you've not checked her out. Amazing channel on specifically Afrofuturist stuff. And she did this kind of conceptual interview with these Afrofuturist authors, and they kind of answered questions set at different time periods, so as if their future self were answering, and it was a really cool concept for doing like an author interview type situation, so very, very cool. Then Lauren from Lauren in the Books is always great, but specifically in this case, she did an Anne Boleyn vlog, all surrounding the musical Six, which I have not seen anything about until randomly I got my brochure for our local kind of touring playhouse place that the Broadway shows do come to, and saw that one and I was like, oh, this sounds interesting, and then immediately saw this vlog, so I was like, oh, that's cool. So she dressed up every day as if she were one of the characters from this, and then she read a bunch of Tudor and Anne Boleyn specific books, so it was great fun. I absolutely loved it. She goes all out for sure. Then we have Middle of the Book March did a wonderful kind of video essay, I would say, about men reading women and about her own choices and impetus for reading more women and in her reading diet, I would say. So that was really interesting, and I have very similar feelings to her. I would say I have, consciously shifted to reading a lot of women and non-binary authors. Definitely myself. For sure, my past was primarily men. So I loved what she had to say. And then finally, La Rosa from La Rosa Reads. She did a festival of books in Pittsburgh and took us along to this big book fair event. I'm so very jealous that she got to see Billy Porter speak, but not only big names like that, she introduced us to kind of some local author talent that she got interested in because of this event. So it was very cool, because I think most of us are either not yet returning to these sort of big convention style events, or they're still being online, that kind of thing. So this was an in-person event, and it was really cool to be able to go along to that with her and get this really fun bookish community sense there. So yeah, so those are my recommendations for the week. I think that is all for me today. Hopefully you are having a good week and not letting the doom scrolling get you down. Thank you all so much for watching, and enjoy the clips. So as always, Aldi delivers. they have these mugs and teacups for pantry. It's very nice. It's got a little chalkboard front. They're settled and they're blooming really nicely. I can't even tell Cinnamon is an old dog. He just loves running through this grass. What are you doing, bud? Just enjoying the beautiful day. Cinnamon. What are you looking for? Come on. Geese love hanging out here. It's a bun. Just tried to take off when I started walking by. Eating somebody's garden. It's okay. Literally like 80 degrees. I have no idea what's going on. Aru cat under the blanket. He loves to be under things. Cinnamon is out. What a weirdo. This is one of my favorite weekend brunches. Scrambled eggs, a little spicy kimchi here, and then I happen to have rainbow quinoa today, a few rice, couscous, whatever I've got. Delicious. So inside they have a tenuous peace. Outside it looks like maybe they're bros against the world together. They're both keeping watch for each other.